Hi there. As we come on the air tonight from New Orleans, we are learning about a major twist in another investigation of what is now being considered an entirely separate attack way out there in Las Vegas, and that bizarre suicide cybertruck explosion also on New Year's Day. And authorities are now saying that they are still piecing together a timeline and a motive for the Special Forces soldier that shot himself and blew up that cybertruck in the entrance of the Trump Tower there. But they are now saying that Green Beret Matthew Livensberger was likely suffering from PTSD. And when investigators finally cracked into Livensberger's phone, they found these journal-like entries in the Notes app where he seemed to be blasting the United States. In one, he called the U.S. terminally ill and headed towards collapse. And then there's the question about a possible motive and a possible unconfirmed manifesto that is going viral online that we're going to get to in just a bit. But first, here's Morgan Chesky with the very latest.
Yeah, Gadi, every evening of this investigation, authorities have shared seemingly stunning details. But tonight, we may have gotten our most clear roadmap yet, not into just how this was pulled off, but also into the life and mind of that 37-year-old soldier who authorities say pulled that Cybertruck into the valet area at this Trump hotel behind me, killed himself, and then detonated a bomb.
Tonight, the motive and final days of Matthew Livensberger coming into sharper focus.
It ultimately appears to be a tragic case of suicide involving a heavily decorated combat veteran who is struggling with PTSD and other issues.
Authorities laying out an extensive forensic accounting of the scene, explaining how they found his wallet and IDs charred but preserved under debris, displaying notes from his burned-up phone, saying the Army Master Sergeant did not have any grudge against Donald Trump, but with the state of the country.
He says, fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves.
Authorities confirming through DNA and matching tattoos the 37-year-old was the one inside the Tesla Cybertruck when it exploded, which they believe happened at the same time he shot himself. They also shared new images of Livensberger at a Tesla charging station, adding data shows the car was not in self-driving mode. With questions mounting over the timing, the FBI stressing there is no known connection between Livensberger, the New Orleans suspect, or any other terrorist organization. Meanwhile, a former girlfriend telling NBC News she received this video from the Green Beret inside what appears to be the rented Cybertruck just days before the explosion. Alicia Arrett telling NBC News the communication began with a text last week telling her he rented the Cybertruck.
I was surprised, especially when I knew he was already married, and I thought he was happy.
Arrett sharing the two dated for several years, bonding over a love of the outdoors, describing him as respectful, driven, and playful.
He was so funny. That was what caught me and drew me in. And it was just like instant chemistry with us.
The messages continued. At 9 a.m. Tuesday, Livensberger texting, I rented a Tesla Cybertruck. It's the expletive. Followed minutes later by, I feel like Batman or Halo. The messaging, including the video inside the truck, continuing till New Year's Eve, when Arrett says he went quiet. She found out about the bombing when she says she was contacted by the FBI.
I don't know what drove him to it. I've just been rolling it around in my head for 2 days.
Arrett says Livensberger was never violent towards her, but often complained of extreme pain following multiple back surgeries, among other issues.
He would have headaches. He had some memory loss and trouble concentrating. I know he had some trouble.
Military records show Livensberger won many commendations, but was never awarded a Purple Heart. He did, however, serve on multiple deployments, including Afghanistan in 2017, 2018, and 2019. Today in Las Vegas, investigators say as they search for a potential motive, the decorated veteran ended with this.
I need to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took.
And tonight, just in the last few hours, Gadi, 2 U.S. government officials tell NBC News that this individual saw a doctor at least 3 times between the months of August and this past December for depression. Not only that, but the Department of Defense has now turned over his military medical records to investigators, but they have not shared if he ever displayed any signs of suicide. Gadi.
NBC's Morgan Chesky, thank you. And amid all the crazy details that continue to come out about the bombing at Trump International Hotel, we are also learning that Ravensburger may have been trying to get a manifesto to a pretty big podcaster, former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan. Authorities have not yet confirmed that the manifesto came from him, but they're saying they're looking into it.
Yeah, so in terms of the so-called manifesto that's circulating online, we have strong evidence to suggest that it was the subject that wrote it, but we haven't conclusively proven that yet. And that evidence relates to other evidence that we're finding that we're able to compare that lead us to believe it was in fact him who sent it.
Again, not a full confirmation there. So let's break this all down with Christopher O'Leary. He is a former senior executive of the Counterterrorism Division of the FBI. Christopher, thanks so much for being with us. If this manifesto is really from him, it is filled with some very bizarre stuff. Claims of anti-gravity technology, war crimes that were allegedly covered up in the Middle East, and the government following him. Let's start with the claims that the FBI was possibly following him. This is one of those things that, regardless of what the FBI says now, a lot of people out there are just going to assume that the FBI was following him. How does this muddy the waters of this investigation going forward here?
Well, I think it makes it incredibly complicated, but unfortunately, it's the norm these days. Disinformation fuels these conspiracy theories. You have distrust in organizations which were traditionally really well regarded, like the FBI, and you have counterterrorism investigators, agents, and intelligence analysts just trying to do their job and protect the country, and they're going to be distrusted as they're doing it. Do I think the FBI was surveilling him? Absolutely not. I think it's very unfortunate the Master Sergeant had the effects of PTSD and TBIs for all of his service and his sacrifice, and it built up over time, and he started feeling paranoid and desperate, and here's where we wound up.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be seeing this and they're going to say, look, Green Berets, I know about that. I trust that organization. I trust those soldiers. I've seen them in popular culture and possibly known them in real life. And then they're going to see FBI and think of some of the distrust that you've been talking about there. It's a very difficult time that we live in. And then you see these claims that he may be making, if this manifesto is his, about the drones over there in the East Coast, that he says he was working with drone technology, and then he says that the drones off the East Coast are anti-gravity technology, possibly deployed by Chinese submarines, and the U.S. has some sort of gravity technology as well. A few years ago, that would have been enough to just dismiss this whole thing as crazy, but today it does feel like this is going to pour gasoline into the mystery, into the conspiracies over what those drones have been. What's your take on all this?
Well, so what doesn't help is on day one of this, with the first press conference, Senator Kennedy setting the foundations for this exact conspiracy theory. And it's tying together, this, government deep state cover-up that people are perceiving with the drones along the East Coast, now with these two horrific acts in New Orleans and Las Vegas, which, as an investigator, trying to tie the two of them together, I never would have thought that in a second anyway. You have to disprove it, but they were just two very uniquely different acts for different reasons. But you have to run that down. Now it's just going to look like to some giant conspiracy when at the end of the day, this Master Sergeant was sick and he was carrying out a symbolic act. Perhaps he thought it was patriotic and ending his life in such a way, maybe similar to the Tunisian street vendor who lit himself on fire and started the Arab Spring. Maybe it was for a greater cause, but he was clearly sick and calling out for help.
Yeah, and one of the other things I wanted to ask you, I'm not sure if this is kind of in your purview, but he does make war crimes allegations. And the question is, are these allegations going to be taken seriously despite the source and the manner that they've been raised here? I mean, some of those allegations do seem to touch on things that seem to have been investigated by the UN.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I've had a very unique FBI career. I've worked very closely with Special Operations Command and Joint Special Operations Command all around the world. They are the most professional organizations within the U.S. military and arguably within the U.S. government. I am sure even though they were probably investigated before, they will be investigated again because they are consummate professionals and they will not let this go unanswered. But they also have a very close relationship with the FBI and will share openly in all of this to make sure that the public is informed and that it's a legitimate investigation. So I am confident of that.
Christopher O'Leary, really appreciate your analysis on a very confusing and complicated story tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Take care.
And now to the latest here on the ground in New Orleans, where a terrorist used a truck to kill 14 people and send dozens more to the hospital. That was just down below us on the famed Bourbon Street here. New details about that attack are raising security concerns here in the French Quarter as we learn more about the suspect. And Jesse Kirsch has the very latest.
Even though Bourbon Street is now open and buzzing, tonight some people are not ready to return to New Orleans' most famous strip.
Just thinking about the crowds that are going to be coming in for the Super Bowl, Mardi Gras, I'm scared.
After Wednesday morning's attack, Jada Songi quit her job as a bartender on Bourbon Street, where she worked for 5 years.
When you saw what the security situation was like on this block last night,
I was baffled. Like, I don't think I can say anything else. It just doesn't make any sense.
Concern for some about safety, even after the city says it has beefed up security. Just hours after Bourbon Street reopened yesterday, we were there. Around 9 p.m. local time, hundreds of people were in and around the bars. And as we looked across Bourbon Street's intersections, while some entrances were fortified with vehicles, at least 2 different side roads leading to Bourbon Street that we saw had no heavy-duty barricades.
Right now, this is one of the safest places on earth.
Even as the city and Louisiana's governor keep promising safety. New Orleans PD says it has resumed normal police operations, and that to protect the integrity of our security efforts, we won't be sharing specific details about operational plans. But new questions tonight about why Bourbon Street was not safe Wednesday morning. NBC News has obtained excerpts from a 2019 corporate intelligence report warning Bourbon Street's barrier system does not appear to work and is rarely used. Excerpts of the report reviewed by NBC News also warn on Bourbon Street, the 2 modes of terror attack most likely to be used are vehicle ramming and active shooting. The report is more than 5 years old, but Bourbon Street's barrier repairs were still unfinished this week when what the FBI says was an ISIS-inspired terrorist killed 14 people. New Orleans police also facing new questions about why these barriers, now on Bourbon Street, were not there on New Year's.
I didn't know about them, but we have them, and so we have been able now to put them out.
The manufacturer of these Archer barriers tells NBC News the city of New Orleans bought the protective equipment in 2017. They're 700 pounds, made of steel, and designed to stop a car ramming attack. And as the public safety debate continues, so does the investigation into Shamsuddin Jabbar. The FBI confirming it was at his Houston residence again today. This video showing a car towed away from the scene. NBC's Houston affiliate KPRC obtaining this video from inside the home, where 2 senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News the FBI found a significant amount of bomb-making materials and chemicals.
We're just as puzzled as the rest of the world.
KPRC also obtaining this interview with Jabbar's brother, who says he and his father were interviewed yesterday by the FBI.
Were there any red flags leading up to the months, weeks, or days before this happened?
No, not that I know of, not that he shared with anybody.
several law enforcement agencies are warning that ISIS supporters online are celebrating the deadly attack that occurred on this street, and that as more of these vehicle attacks occur, they are highlighted more frequently in terrorist propaganda. Back to you.
Jesse, thank you. And now just some exclusive NBC News reporting. Right now we're about 5 blocks down from where the truck finally came to a crash. And this is the area where that terrorist planted some IED bombs. So this new reporting is showing that inside one of those pipe bombs was a type of explosive that's never been seen before in a terrorist attack here in the United States. Tom Winter explains.
Well, late details tonight from the FBI and ATF in a statement putting out new information as to just what they found in the course of their searches and their investigation, not only in Houston. where Jabbar is from, but also in New Orleans at the Airbnb where apparently he stayed at prior to conducting this attack. They say at that Airbnb, he had set up all sorts of various chemicals or perhaps bomb-making materials at that location. They found 3 cell phones, 2 laptops, and they say that he set up accelerants in an effort to be able to create such a fire that all those things I described would be destroyed after the attack occurred, making it much more difficult for investigators. But that didn't happen, and that's why they found those materials. They also found inside the truck a remote trigger that would have set off potentially those 2 functional IEDs. Why they went off, investigators say they don't have that information yet. In Houston today, more searches and more law enforcement activity by the FBI, recovering a vehicle that belonged to Jabbar. They're going to take that to the FBI field office and examine it for further information, for further evidence, and try to figure out what's inside of it, potentially in that trunk. Have they found new information that has led them back to that car and back to that search? We have some new exclusive reporting tonight from NBC News. 2 senior law enforcement officials saying that they found a very rare explosive inside those 2 functional IEDs left behind near Bourbon Street. They say that this rare explosive has never been seen before in a terrorist attack in the United States or in Europe. They're not quite sure how he became aware of it, how he put it together, but it's something that they're definitely following in this investigation, which remains ongoing. And as they've been saying, in its early stages, they still believe he acted alone. That's the latest that we have tonight, Gadi.
Tom Winter with that exclusive reporting. Tom, thank you. And while we're back here on Bourbon Street, and we know that we have to talk a little bit about the suspect, about how all this went down, what we really want to talk about are the victims and the moments of heroism, the moments of survival. And there is one moment in particular that happened right here that we want to show you. Take a look.
When the gunshots rang out New Year's morning on Bourbon Street, Alexis Scott Wyndham was there. She had just been hit by the speeding truck, then hit by gunfire.
I tried to run, but I couldn't. That's when I noticed something was wrong with my foot. I thought it was just a broken bone or something, but it wasn't. My feet had started leaking. But as I'm getting up, I'm seeing the dead bodies on the side of me. So it's like one on this side, and it's like one on this side. It's one man on this side. I'm like, Jesus, please just let me make it home.
Now back home in Alabama, she remembers that in the chaos, her friend called her mother.
So somebody called your mom and she said, you got to make a tourniquet out of your sock?
Yes.
I mean, your mom, it sounds like your mom was trying to save you from afar.
Yes. She already knew to call my mama. So I was like, calm down, stop the bleeding, because I was bleeding a lot. And after that, they tied it tight.
Among the dozens of people hurt, tonight she's one of the lucky ones, already released from the hospital. She's thankful for the stranger that picked her up and rushed her to the emergency room.
And you still don't know his name?
I still don't. I've been trying to find out who he was.
While along Bourbon Street, candles for victims like New Orleans native son Terry Kennedy. His nephew says he would often bring a broom here and help keep the sidewalks clean.
Is there a memory that sticks out to you?
Just like we seen him yesterday. Yeah, I'm always remember because I seen him New Year's Eve, and the last words I told him was, we told each other we'll see each other later. And I guess this is my later.
A community mourning 14 souls lost, their lives cut short celebrating the dawn of a new year.
And Alexis tells us this is the spot that she was standing. She had just gotten some pizza, and this is where she saw the truck barreling its way down. She was able to almost jump out of the way. The truck struck her leg, and then she was hit by gunfire as well. She was stuck here in all of that chaos on the sidewalk. They were able to make that call to her mom. She told them to stay calm, to tie a tourniquet with the sock, and then a Good Samaritan comes out of nowhere, scoops her up, takes her to a truck, and rushes her to the emergency room. And one of the things she told us she is still thinking about is the other people, the other victims that were struck, that were just a few feet away from where she was. One of those memorials is right there for one of the lives that was lost here on Bourbon Street. It's just something that she's thinking about and keeping in her prayers. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. I'm Valerie Castro, picking up the rest of this hour for Gadi Schwartz. Here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. New warnings over the risk of cancer from alcohol. Today, the U.S. Surgeon General urging for a cancer risk label on alcoholic beverages. A new report ties a link between consuming booze and at least 7 types of cancer, with alcohol being the 3rd leading cause of cancer behind tobacco and obesity. Any change to drink labels will need to go through Congress. President Biden is pumping the brakes on a U.S. steel deal with Japan, blocking a $15 billion takeover of the company U.S. Steel by a Japanese counterpart. Some saw the deal as a way to get U.S. Steel on a better financial footing. The deal, though, was opposed by a powerful union. Both companies are pushing back, hinting they may take legal action. JetBlue is paying up for flying chronically delayed flights, agreeing to a $2 million fine from the feds today. They say the airline had unrealistic scheduling, hurting passengers and the industry. Half the penalty will actually go to JetBlue's customers who have been affected. A U.S. Olympic sprinter is arrested in Miami Beach. Fred Curley is accused of police battery, facing charges of resisting an officer and disorderly conduct. The Olympian allegedly became aggressive at the site of a police investigation. Police say they used a stun gun on him after he disobeyed commands. Curley won the bronze medal in the 100-meter race at the Paris Olympics. President Biden granted the Medal of Honor and Medal of Valor to military heroes and first responders. He presented the Medal of Honor to 6 fallen U.S. soldiers and 1 living recipient who all served in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. While in a separate ceremony, he awarded the Medal of Valor to 8 first responders who all put their lives on the line. And late today, a new development in President-elect Trump's New York hush money case. Judge Juan Merchan now saying he will sentence Trump on January 10th, just days before his inauguration. A jury of 12 found Trump guilty on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records back in June. NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos joins me now. So, Danny, Judge Merchan has already noted that he will, quote, not impose any sentence of incarceration. So what is the point of the sentencing then?
Judge Merchan has gone beyond that, actually. It's not only is he not going to incarcerate him, he's going to give him an unconditional discharge. That is the best possible outcome you can get. It's basically a sentence of no sentence. That means no probation, no orange vest picking up trash on the side of the highway, no community service, no nothing. It's so unusual that a judge would announce in advance what a defendant is going to get at sentencing. I can tell you that sentencing is incredibly stressful for a defense attorney for exactly that reason. You have absolutely no idea what your client is going to get. Even if you have a deal with the prosecutor, the judge isn't bound to follow that. So that uncertainty now removed, Trump is rolling into sentencing already knowing he's getting nothing.
And Danny, Trump and his team had asked Judge Merchan to vacate this verdict. They're still calling the ruling baseless. Could we possibly see Trump not showing up for the sentencing?
No, no way, because why wouldn't he? I mean, he's going to show up by Skype or in person. I'm sure he'll make more of a PR decision rather than whether he actually wants to come or not. I don't know. That doesn't really make much of a difference procedurally, but what is significant procedurally is that once he appears and is sentenced to essentially no sentence, the judgment of conviction is essentially final. Now he can appeal, but he will be now found guilty and sentenced, which is a victory for the prosecution. But it's also a victory for a defendant who's getting 0 on 34 felonies, which, by the way, Class E felonies, he shouldn't have gotten prison anyway, but he would have been expected to get probation or something along those lines, not a 0 penalty whatsoever.
The judge has also left open the possibility of sentencing Trump after his term as president is done. How would that work?
It won't work. If he sentences him on January 10, that will be it. He's going to sentence him to an unconditional discharge, as opposed to a conditional discharge where you get a bunch of things you have to do as a defendant. Then you come back, and if you've been good, then your penalty is over. This is even better. It's just your sentence is nothing. I don't know how to explain it, except that for the most part, when we talk about somebody getting a non-incarceration sentence, we're talking about probation for sure, or maybe even house arrest, something where they're doing some kind of penalty. The judge in this case has announced in advance that Trump is getting nothing. We are now outside the rules of procedure because this just doesn't happen. Don't take it from me. Read Justice Merchan's own opinion. He says, and I'm paraphrasing, I really shouldn't do this, but I'm going to announce that you're getting no penalty, Trump. So you can appear by Skype, you can appear in person, you can appear by Zoom, you can do whatever you want.
All right, Danny Cevallos, thanks for your time. We appreciate you. The anniversary of the riot at the Capitol is just days away, and 4 years later, the FBI is releasing footage of a suspect still wanted for placing pipe bombs near the DNC and RNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. NBC's Ken Delanian has more.
Hey, Valerie. As we approach the 4-year anniversary of the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the FBI is seeking the public's help to try to solve one of the enduring mysteries of that period, and that is who planted 2 pipe bombs at Republican and Democratic headquarters in Washington, D.C. in the wee hours of the morning the night before the attack on the Capitol. The FBI has been unable to solve this crime despite having a very clear image of the person who planted the bombs. But as you can see in this video, the person is wearing a surgical mask, a hoodie, and they have no image of that person's face, despite reviewing 39,000 video clips from that period. They've also conducted 1,000 interviews, and they've received 600 tips from the public, FBI officials told us. But they still don't have any idea who this person is. They're not even sure of the gender of the person. They did come out with a new height estimate, though, based on some forensics. They think this person is 5 feet 7 inches tall. And their message to the public is, somebody out there knows something. If you do, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. There's a $500,000 reward for information leading to the capture of this person. And one of the other things they've put out over the years is this person was wearing distinctive shoes, Nike Air Max shoes. You can see them pictured here in gray, black, and gold. Only about 25,000 of those shoes were sold in the United States. That hasn't been enough to narrow it down. Because they haven't solved this case, they're not even sure what the motive was. These were real bombs. They could have gone off. They didn't. Vice President Kamala Harris came within feet of the one at the Democratic headquarters. But a working theory has been that these may have been set as a diversion to divert law enforcement officers away from the Capitol riot when they were discovered. And they did have that effect. Thankfully, though, again, they didn't go off. No one was hurt. But the FBI is determined to solve this case no matter how long it takes. Valerie, back to you.
Okay, Ken Delanian, thank you. To Capitol Hill, where the House officially has a speaker, with Mike Johnson winning the top job, but not without some drama. Johnson securing enough votes in the first round of voting only after 2 far-right holdouts in his own party caved. The dramatic scene playing out on the House floor earlier today, with the GOP now having the thinnest majority in almost 100 years. The vote setting the stage for Republican control of the House, Senate, and presidency. But there's questions of how this razor-thin majority will play out as the GOP looks to kickstart their legislative priorities, facing an uphill battle to get everything through. NBC senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake has the latest details for us.
This was a dramatic day on Capitol Hill, although by the standards of the last Congress, a pretty smooth opening altogether for this Republican-controlled Congress. What we saw was a mini revolt by 3 Republican members willing to block Mike Johnson's return to the speakership. The vote was held open for about an hour while Johnson, some of his colleagues, and ultimately the president-elect Donald Trump worked to convince these members that Johnson was the best option, the only option, and really key to getting him elected was then the opportunity to unlock the rest of the Trump agenda, including the counting of those electoral votes on January 6th, which is Monday, right around the corner. No time for delay. These members who had voted against Johnson had kind of unspecific demands. They wanted to see a focus on cutting spending. They wanted to make sure that Johnson was up for the fight. And what they ultimately got from Johnson were basically unspecific promises that, yes, he too wants to cut spending, and yes, he too is up for a fight. But the reality on the ground in the House is that the Republican majority is just so small, and the Republicans are just so fractious among themselves that they're probably going to have to rely, at least to some extent, on Democrats to get anything done, which means the dynamics of the last Congress will continue to be the dynamics of this Congress, just with Donald Trump sitting down the other end of the Pennsylvania Avenue to apply pressure and perhaps even some scorn when he doesn't get what he wants from this Republican Congress.
Garrett Haake, thank you for that report. Coming up, relatives of the Menendez brothers met with L.A. County's new district attorney today. We'll tell you how that went. But first, you got to see this. Now that the holidays are over, Christmas trees are starting to pile up on curbs around the world. But in Berlin, they found a way to recycle the unsold trees by gifting it to zoo animals. It's a yearly tradition at the Berlin Zoo. for the elephants, reindeers, and giraffes. The tradition was especially exciting for 2 young giraffes who tried Christmas tree for the very first time. A satisfying start to the new year for those guys. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following. 2 people are dead and 19 others injured after a small plane crashed in Southern California. The plane crashed through the roof of a furniture manufacturing building where at least 200 people were working. The pilot told air traffic control it was turning around just 2 minutes after takeoff, but it's unclear what caused the crash. And a little monkey business in California after a man was arrested speeding in a Rolls-Royce with 4 large containers of weed and, get this, a 1-month-old spider monkey wearing a onesie. The driver was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence, possession of an exotic animal, and possession of cannabis for sale. But don't worry, the monkey was brought to the Oakland Zoo, which specializes in caring for exotic animals confiscated across the state. And Hollywood's award season is officially here as Sunday marks the 82nd Golden Globes. This year's host is comedian Nikki Glazer, with the show set to air at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Some of the big movies competing include Wicked, A Complete Unknown, and Emilia Perez. Just moments ago, the Los Angeles district attorney saying no decision to resentence the Menendez brothers has yet been made, but the work is ongoing. DA Nathan Hochman meeting behind closed doors with the family of Eric and Lyle Menendez just within the last few hours.
A number of the victim family members came in. It was a very productive session where they gave me all their thoughts about what should happen in this case. And we will continue to do this difficult but important work of reviewing the facts and the law to make the right decision in this case.
About 20 members of the family met with the DA, continuing their push for the brothers to be resentenced. Eric and Lyle are both serving life sentences without the possibility of parole for the 1989 murder of their parents. The brothers claim they shot their parents after years of sexual abuse at the hands of their father. Liz Kreutz is following these late developments in Los Angeles for us. So, Liz, what do we know about what happened during that closed-door meeting?
Hey, Valerie. Well, I was able to talk to some of the family members. They all gathered at a restaurant after the meeting that, I should say, lasted for almost 3 hours. I don't think anybody expected that. It went on for a long time. There were several family members there. And the initial reaction I got from some of the family members that I talked to was that they were pleased with how it went. They felt that it was a good meeting. They were happy that he gave them so much time. One of the family members told me that each of the family members went around individually and said what they wanted to tell him. One of them said what she witnessed in the home when she was younger. She didn't elaborate on what that was. They certainly were pleased, and I also got the sense they were pleased because they felt that Hochman didn't really tip his hand on which way he was leaning. I think from some of his previous interviews he's done, perhaps the family had a sense that maybe he was leaning against the resentencing. But overall, it was a positive feeling from this meeting. One of the family members, the cousin of the brothers, she spoke to some of us reporters afterwards, and she thanked the DA for the meeting and also then made very clear what the family wants. Take a listen.
This 35-year process has been incredibly traumatizing for us, as I'm sure that you can all imagine. We are very much hoping that we can find a path to manslaughter, that we can see the release of the brothers immediately.
No, it may not be the DA that ultimately makes the recommendation for manslaughter, but they are truly hoping that the judge who has this ultimate decision might do that at the hearing later this month. Valerie.
So, Liz, it sounds like the DA at least took the time to listen to the family. What is the likelihood that the meeting could move the needle in any way?
I mean, certainly the family is hoping that it will, but the DA, again, has really been pretty measured and not tipping his hat on where he stands. He says that he's meeting with the family members, who also, by the way, consider themselves the victims. They're also the relatives of the Kitty and Jose who were murdered. So talking to them, certainly seeing the large group of them holds some weight, although interestingly, the DA in his press conference said that seeing 20-something family members actually wasn't hugely significant to him. What was more significant is the content of what they said. And the DA went on to talk about what he's really looking for as he makes this decision. Take a listen.
You look at the entire record of behavior while they've been in prison for over 3 decades. And ultimately what you're doing is you're providing that information, as we intend to do, to the court. It's taking a lot of time, but it's one of those decisions that you want to make sure you get right.
So right now, in addition to talking to the family, those family members that are supporting their release, he's also talking to the uncle who does not support their release. He's talking to other prosecutors that maybe are for or against their release, and they're reading through the transcripts of both of the original trials, looking at the brothers' prison files, seeing how they've been rehabilitated in prison. That was something the DA continued to bring up, is really looking at how they've been rehabilitated, what they've done in their 30-plus years behind bars to sort of become better people. Valerie.
Yes, certainly a lot to consider there. Liz Kreutz, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Coming up, frenzy in South Korea after police tried and failed to arrest their president. We'll tell you all about the dramatic standoff coming up after the break. Welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Officials in Egypt have told travel and airline companies to ban Syrian passengers from anywhere in the world. The only exception is those who have temporary residency permits. It's an upgrade from a ban from 2 weeks ago when Egypt banned Syrians who had European, American, and Canadian residency permits. And America isn't the only place seeing a current drop in temperatures. Conditions in the Gaza Strip are getting worse as it gets colder and colder, and access to a hot meal is difficult for many. A crowd, including young children, gathered at a soup kitchen to try and get a free meal, many of them lining up before the sun came up.
صار 6 سنوات بطلنا ناخذ لنا طعم طبيخ ناكل نشرب ايش نعمل فيش تطحين ما فيش سكر ما فيش شوادر ما فيش بطانيات ما فيش فرشات الناس ضايعه ما فيش شيء وكل شيء غالي الناس ما قادره تشتري شيء اصلا.
International aid agencies say the humanitarian crisis is worsening in Gaza, and many are concerned about a rise of hypothermia in children. Meanwhile, police in Australia say a missing surfer is believed to have died in a shark attack. A witness saw the attack happen and went to get help, but only retrieved the man's surfboard. Emergency responders and volunteers searched the water for nearly 2 days, but now police are preparing a coroner's report. And officials in Kenya are investigating a huge piece of space junk that fell and crash-landed in a village there. The country's space agency says the object was actually a metal ring from a launch rocket. No one was hurt, but residents were pretty shaken up. They're trying to figure out where exactly it came from and who owns it. Over to South Korea, where police and presidential security came head-to-head during an attempt to arrest President Yoon Suk-yeol. The altercation comes exactly 1 month after Yoon's failed attempt to declare martial law, for which he was impeached. NBC's Megan Fitzgerald has the latest.
As supporters of the impeached South Korean president gathered to show their support and tried to stand in the way of police, President Yoon Suk-yeol refusing to surrender, engaging in a 6-hour standoff with authorities, trying to serve an unprecedented warrant for his arrest at his gated compound in the heart of Seoul. Officers trying to serve that warrant were blocked by a wall of roughly 200 security agents who tell NBC News they are required by law to protect the president. Yoon's lawyer says the warrant and the use of riot police is illegal. Yoon, who has been impeached and stripped of his authority, is wanted for questioning over his botched attempt to declare martial law last month. A shocking move that sent the South Korean military into the streets, banning all political activity and censoring the media before it was rescinded only 6 hours later.
국회의 계엄 해제 요구가 있어 계엄 사무에 투입된 군을 철수시켰습니다.
Yoon has argued the martial law decree was legitimate, saying the opposition Democratic Party had undermined the government and sympathized with North Korea. Investigators suspending efforts to serve the warrant, citing safety concerns. But the warrant doesn't expire until Monday, and officials could try to execute it again before then. Some supporters who gathered outside the presidential palace holding "Stop the Steal" signs, a slogan popularized by President-elect Donald Trump, who has twice been impeached and acquitted Our Steve Patterson was outside the residence as authorities moved in.
You can see the crowd here, including MAGA hat, American flags. We can take it through the crowd here. These are, of course, hardcore conservative supporters who are trying to block the arrest. There is now an arrest warrant for the president who has been impeached. These people very passionate, protesting all day, in fact, laying down in front of his residence at one point. They want this police action to stop. They say it is wrong. And President Yoon is encouraging his supporters to do so. Very animated crowd.
This supporter says they think Trump would support Yoon Suk-yeol and that impeachment is illegal. But a majority of South Koreans, nearly 90%, do not approve of Yoon, according to Gallup Korea. Weeks of political unrest have sent thousands of protesters into the streets. This person saying the president should be arrested immediately to reset peace in the country. The first formal hearing for Yoon's impeachment trial is set for January 14th. Megan Fitzgerald, NBC News.
Back now with the memorial starting to take shape for the victims of the New Orleans terror attack, one in particular created by an artist who has traveled the world to create long-lasting tributes to lives lost during tragedy. Here's George Solis tonight in New Orleans.
Tonight, in the heart of the French Quarter on Bourbon Street, the music isn't the only thing drawing crowds. All eyes fixed on the man in the cowboy hat with a brush in hand, adding color to a canvas where the city experienced one of its darkest days.
I want him to know that what I do is a message of support, and I want him to know that we are here.
His name is Roberto Marquez, an immigrant and self-taught artist from Dallas that for the last 6 years has been on a mission to honor lives lost during tragedies with works of art. Each project, a unique entry in a mission that has taken him all over the country and world.
How many have you done to your recollection? I think I lost count by now.
That says something.
Yes, many.
Marquez set up this installation in Uvalde, Texas, where a gunman killed 19 children and 2 adults. He painted this mural in Surfside, Florida, after the 2021 condo collapse. Constructed this piece in Baltimore, Maryland, after the bridge collapse that killed 6 workers. He's also been to Spain after this year's deadly flooding, Turkey in the aftermath of the 2023 earthquake, and Ukraine in the early days of the war.
Here's another example. We have a situation where, many families lost their loved ones, and somehow they, I guess, for the work that you do, they get to know that we're united.
Marquez gives each mural to the city or town he's in. The New Orleans piece will not only include a mural, but 14 large crosses, one for each of the victims. The work at times emotionally overwhelming.
I'm not strong, and sometimes I'm surprised seeing people when they come and say, we want to thank you because you're doing so and so here on the memorial to our loved one. They talk and I say, I'm the one that I'm about to cry, And it is difficult.
Despite the pain, Marquez is not defeated, but does hope that each stroke may be his last.
Do you wish that you didn't have to do this? Yes, I wish this would be the last one. And as far as tragedy, I wish that these problems diminish,
And what a work of art that would be for all. George Solis, NBC News, New Orleans.
And before we go tonight, it's time for the future of everything, and we're talking about future generations. These are some of the first babies born in 2025, and they mark the start of Generation Beta. We'll tell you all about that coming up. Tonight in the future of everything, what comes after Generation Alpha? But first, ever thought Siri was listening to your convos, then hitting you with ads? Well, you might get paid for it. Apple denies wrongdoing, but just agreed to pay $95 million in a lawsuit claiming Siri's been eavesdropping. If you're eligible, you could get up to $20 per Siri-enabled device. And speaking of freebies from Apple, Apple TV Plus is completely free this weekend. Binge all the shows and movies you want, no subscription needed. It's Apple's way of giving you a peek behind its paywall in hopes of boosting their numbers. And one of the biggest stories so far in 2025 happens to be about new babies. That's right. This year marks the beginning of a whole new generation that will be known as Generation Beta. What cultural moments or advancements will define these babies is yet to be seen. But Maya Eaglin is here to tell us all about these adorable newcomers.
These babies are among the first to be born in 2025.
You're just all the cutest.
But this new year also brings a new generation.
Known as Generation Beta. Generation Beta.
Generation Beta.
My wife and I are expecting a baby May 30th of 2025.
How are you feeling about your baby being part of Generation Beta?
Oh, I think it's pretty exciting that, my child will be born in like the second quarter of the century. And I wonder how advances in technology and culture will impact, his life.
Every generation has their defining moments and stereotypes. Baby boomers born in a wave after World War II lived through the Civil Rights Movement, Vietnam, and the Cold War, now entering their golden years. Gen X, the 65 million latchkey kids defined by MTV, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and rebellion. The millennials, growing up on a new thing called the internet, 9/11, and coming of age during the Great Recession, but often stereotyped as entitled. Gen Z, masters of social media, who experts say struggle with tradition, their formative years fractured by the pandemic. And Gen Alpha, still kids, some obsessed with skincare, some actually moving away from social media, but still introducing us all to terms like Skibbity Riz Ohio.
Skibbity Sigma with Riz in Ohio.
So what will it be for Gen Beta?
Because they're going to be completely different from previous generations.
Jason Dorsey is the president and lead researcher at the Center for Generational Kinetics.
They are the first generation that will come of age post-COVID.
And the AI boom could have a huge impact.
The key thing is they won't know a time before AI is integrated into everything. Whatever that immersive, highly personalized technology that they engage with the world, older generations will eventually adopt the same.
Dorsey says many Gen Betas will likely see the next century, which has its pros and cons, especially when it comes to climate change.
Gen Beta will face climate change in a way that no other previous generation has really had to deal with that.
These are things Evan Fisher has been thinking about, too.
I'm worried that there is a trend towards more nationalistic political sentiment. I worry that may, impact the world in which, these children will be raised. I also think that there's probably going to be a risk that climate change will really come to a head.
And how does that make you feel as a new parent, knowing that your child will likely be facing some of those challenges?
I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict what the future holds. I pray that I can give my child a home that they can grow and feel strong and, be resilient in the face of, challenges that they'll inevitably face throughout their life.
Our thanks to Maya Eaglin for that report. That does it for us tonight. But as we say goodnight, we want to thank all the people working hard to get Stay Tuned Now on the air every night and wish you all a great start to your new year.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.